All right, Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as we give you our conclusions from our film study session on the Thursday night debacle against the Rams. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. They do run out. So get there early, get some brisket chili, go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them the Krug sent you. And we're also brought to you by Sharp Corners, Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, on the Monterey Peninsula. Thanks to Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. And this video is brought to you as well by our good friends at Mancini's. That's right. We're brought to you by Mancini's Sleep World. Bingo. There we go. Mancini Sleep World is a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. They offer a 120-night guarantee with a range of brands and price points. With Mancini's, you get free next-day delivery. Man, I love my Mancini's bed. Click the link below or go to sleepworld.com. Find a bed that works for you, whether shopping online or visiting in store. Use the code KRUG10, and you'll get 10% off. That's KRUEG 10. And you'll get 10% off in-store or online at sleepworld.com. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Niners game against the Rams the other night. Just an absolute tire fire of a game, just so frustrating to watch. All right, some conclusions from the game. First of all, I love Kyle Shanahan, but the game plan was awful. He seemed really interested in getting Deebo going. That should not have been the game plan. The game plan should have been focused on George Kittle, Isaac Orendo, and Juwan Jennings. Those are your three weapons that we're producing at the highest level. It's week 14 or 15. I mean, you know what this team is. It's not early in the year. You know there's a track record of success and failure for a lot of these players. He should have went with his best hand. Fire your best shot. George Kittle is your best player. Go with him. Garendo is your most explosive runner. Go with him. Jacob Cowing is your most fastest wide receiver. Go with him. Go with JJ. Go with Kittle. Go with those guys. Instead, Kyle seemed like he was interested in just trying to placate Deebo Samuel. I mean, from the first snap, the entire game plan revolved around Deebo Samuel. And I realized Deebo, went on social media and, talked a big game. I'm not struggling and this and that. But it's like you rewarded him for that. Why? So now it's like the whole game plan was get him the ball. This guy's a has-been. He's done. He's lost a step. And it's like everybody knows it except for Shanahan. I mean, we knew it in the Super Bowl when he was targeted 11 times and caught 3 balls and couldn't get away from Snead and McDuffie. That was obvious. That was the precursor to this year. He's taken several steps back this year, and you get to a gotta have it game at home, and you're gonna just try to feature Deebo Samuel over the other guys that you had. I mean, I thought it was a terrible game plan. Here's reason number 2 that Shanahan was lost and needs a sabbatical or some kind of timeout or whatever. It's a rainy night against the 28th rated defense in the league against the run. And you come out in a game that was always a 1-score game from beginning to end, and you passed the ball 31 times and you ran it 18 times with your running backs on a rainy night against a bad run D when your offensive line's not opening holes. I mean, 10 of Garendo's 16 carries went for 3 yards or less. And so Garendo can't be, the O-line wasn't opening holes, but I mean, you got to try to run the ball. You got to try to run the ball outside. I mean, LA was 28th against the run, and yet the Niners couldn't run. If that's not an indication that their offensive line is not very good and needs a lot of turnover on it, I don't know what is. I mean, you can't run the ball when anybody thinks you need to run the ball, and you can't run it when you need to run it. But to come out in this game on a wet night and throw it 31 times against a bad run D made no sense at all. Made absolutely no sense at all. I mean, it was a must-win game, and the Niners did not score a touchdown at home against one of the worst defenses in pro football. So very, very, very frustrating. Other takeaway is the 49ers offensive line is so bad. They haven't been able to run the ball for the most part, multiple weeks. 3-3 a carry this game against the Rams, 3-9 against the Bears last week, 2-8 against the Packers a few weeks ago, 3-4 a carry against Tampa Bay. They have to be able to run the ball better than they ran the ball. The Niners have no speed at wide receiver. Brock Purdy throwing to his wideouts on Thursday night, 6 of 20 for 63 yards, 1 interception, and a 19.4 rating. Now, it wasn't a great night for Purdy, but Ricky Pearsall has 2 catches for 21 yards on 107 routes run in the past 5 games. That's awful. I mean, that's awful. Purdy was 0 for 7 on deep balls. His deep ball looked terrible. He was 0 for 5 on deep balls to the outside the numbers. So I don't know if Purdy's elbow's hurting him or if his shoulder, but he's lost some arm strength, and his arm did not look good. It was like the Niners had no downfield passing attack to speak of. But that's on Purdy because he can't throw, but it's also on these receivers that don't separate. The Niners didn't even cross the Rams' 25-yard line. I mean, how about that? So the offense was really bad. Shanahan doesn't win close games because they don't play good situational football. Shanahan is 19-30 in the regular season in games decided by 7 points or less. You can't win close games in the NFL if you can't play situational football, and they don't play good situational football. They're not going to the playoffs this year because they couldn't win in the division. They blew 4 leads in the fourth quarter in the division. Week 3 against the Rams, they led 24-14 with 12 minutes left. They lost. Week 5 against Arizona, they led by 10 to start the fourth quarter. They lost. Week 11 against Seattle, they led 17-13 in the final minute and lost. Week 15 against the Rams, they led 6-3 to start the fourth quarter and lost. The 49ers are the first team to lose 4 divisional games after leading the fourth quarter since the 0-16 Detroit Lions of 2008. So that's not good. The Niners are not good in the red zone this year. They didn't even reach the red zone or score a touchdown in a game for the first time since 2012. So Devondre Campbell went AWOL, but good riddance to him. They never should have signed him to begin with. They should have cut him a month ago. The offensive line wasn't good run blocking, but they weren't good pass blocking. They gave up 19 pressures. So Brock wasn't good, but Brock wasn't good partially because his receivers aren't open, partially because his offensive line is a sieve and gave up 19 pressures. Booney gave up 5. McKivitz gave up 4. So, I mean, I don't know what else you can say about that. And as far as Pro Football Focus, I mean, the highest rated players were Kittle, Jalen Moore, Garendo, Pearsall, and Conley. Those are the 5 highest graded players on offense. 5 highest graded players on defense were Warner, Greenlaw, Bosa, Lenore, and Yadam. The lowest rated players on offense were Banks, Saubert, and Samuel. Aaron Banks has had a rough finish to this year, and I would say he's probably going to have to depart in free agency. And the 3 lowest graded Niner players on defense were Flanagan Fowles, Kalia Davis, and Yatir Gross-Matos. Fred Warner was awesome. Amazing performance for Fred. He led the team in run defense grade, tackling grade, pass rushing grade, 15 tackles. He had a pass defense. Fred was amazing. Dre Greenlaw was amazing. Second highest defensive grade on the team, despite the fact he hadn't played in 10 months. And the Niners got a bunch of pressures. Bosa had 6, Collins had 4, Gross-Matos had 3. But the bottom line is, if you hit Stafford, you beat him. And if you don't hit him, he beats you. And they didn't hit him. They didn't sack him at all. And this year in their wins, he'd been sacked 6 times. And in their losses, he was sacked 22 times. And it was absolutely the key in this game. If you hit Stafford, you were going to beat the Rams. If you didn't hit Stafford, you weren't going to beat the Rams. The Niners didn't hit Stafford, and they didn't beat the Rams. So now they've lost 3 in a row to the Rams. 0 sacks of Stafford. Once again, in his losses, he was sacked 22 times. In his wins, he was sacked 6 times. The key to this game was sack and hit Matthew Stafford, and they couldn't do it. And that's why they lost the game. So the offense was bad. Shanahan's play calling was bad. Purdy had the worst game he's had since the Ravens game on Christmas. The receivers are slow as shit. The offensive line is a mess. Special teams had penalties. They weren't great, but they weren't terrible. The defense did what they could, but they couldn't rush the passer, and they folded like a cheap suit in the final 5 minutes. In the final 5 minutes of the game, when everybody knew the Rams were going to run Kyren Williams, the Niners didn't stop Kyren Williams. So it was a team loss. I'd blame it more on the offense, of course, than the defense, because you lost 12-6. But Devondre Campbell quit on the Niners. The Niners should have dumped him weeks ahead of time. Greenlaw was spectacular. But the Niners, once again, I mean, they badly need a rebuild. Kyle Shanahan badly needs a reshuffle somehow. They're too slow at wide receiver. They're not dynamic enough weapon-wise. They're not nearly stout enough along the offensive line. And Brock, with the arm strength that he showed at the second half of the year, that's not good enough to be the franchise quarterback. If that's where his arm strength is going to be going forward, then they're going to have to find a different quarterback. If he can regain the arm strength that he had prior to the second half of the year, then he can be the starting quarterback. And it'll be interesting to see what his contract talks look like this summer. But there you go. The offense was bad. The defense folded when it counted. The special teams, again, with costly penalties in key moments. Shanahan absolutely cratered here. You should have featured Kittle and JJ and Garendo, and instead you featured Deebo, and you paid the price. All right, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corners and Mancini's as well. Thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.